Oftentimes when putting together figures for Spectra, you probably have multiple Spectra that you kind of just want to overlay and be able to see, directly by eye any, similarities and any differences that you have in those cases. And so the way that you can have multiple Spectra plotted within the same plot within the same figure is you can do it really easily within Excel. So I have Excel open right here. So if I go and I open up my file, right? So I'm looking at, let me just pull up real quick, Spectra, right? So I have a bunch of Spectra that are in here. You can't see it right now, right? So it's .jdx files is what, WebMode downloads it as. So if we click on all files, we see all of them right here. So what I can do is I can just open up one of them, right? It's a .jdx file. And so the formatting of it, right, isn't your typical formatting. But, if you look through the file, right, you can see that essentially the x-axis data, right, is in one, in a single line, and then there's a space, and then you have then the y-axis data for each different point. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we click on delimited. We want to go here, unclick tab, change that to space, right? And so now what it'll do is that anytime there's a space within a line, right, it'll treat that as if it should be a different column in these cases. So we can click on finish now. And so here we can see, right, that it, successfully separated out the x-axis from the y-axis data in these cases. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we delete out anything that isn't our data. The reason for that is if I were to just go ahead now and be like, oh, I'm just going to go plot this stuff, right? I'm going to select these two lines, right, because it has my y-axis and my x-axis data. I click on insert. I click here on scatter plot. And so a nice way, right, that you can always, make any of these plots is if you just simply do scatter with smooth lines. We click on this right here, right, we see our plot right here. The thing is, looking at it, the x-axis is completely off, right? So the x-axis is actually just simply the row number. It's not the actual x-axis points, right? Because if we're, since this right here is an IR spectrum, right, I think the maximum value that we got out of it was, I think, 3,500. Or something like that. Yeah, 3,573 wave numbers is what the maximum x-axis should be, right? Whereas right here, right, we're coming up to 10,000. And that has to do with the fact that it's not reading the x-axis data truly as x-axis data, right? Because it has all of these additional points in here. So what we need to do, let me just delete that plot, is we need to delete out all of those so that the only things that we have are just simply our x-axis and our y-axis data. So I'm just going to select these first ones right here. I'm going to delete these rows. And then I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, right? Because there's one last row that's left here, right? And that's this end row right here. Because again, if I were to take this and I were to just simply plot this without having those earlier ones, you get the same exact result, right? Where it has way too much information right there. Whereas if I go here now and I delete that end, delete that, and now I plot, these 2 points right here, insert, right? Choose the smooth line scatter plot. Right now, this matches what I want it to be. Right, we're going from 0, or less than 0, right? Because there were some negative numbers earlier, right? All the way up to around 3,500 wave numbers in those cases, right? So now this right here matches. So we have a really nice plot right there of the IR spectrum for the acetaldehyde that we had calculated. So that's how you would do it for a single one, essentially, right? To do the plot, the general plotting in those cases. Because we're trying to look at, a few other ones, we have to open those up now too, right? So I go back to File, I click on Open, right, Browse, and then I select, the next one, right? So I'm going to select the acetamide, open this up, right? Same thing, delimited, unclick Tab, click Space, click Finish, right? We have all of this right here. Delete out everything that isn't my X and Y data, right? So I'll go all the way to the bottom, make sure I delete out that end. Delete that out. Right now I can take these two things, copy this, and now I can go back into my other plot, right, with the acetaldehyde, and now I can just simply, put that into column C and D right there, right? So I have those two together right there. I can do then the next thing right here. So I go to open. I can now open up my acetyl chloride. Same exact thing, right? Delimited. Unclick tab, click space, finish. This is here, delete out everything that I don't need. So delete, go all the way to the bottom, delete the end, copy both rows A and B into the one that we have with all of them in here, right? And so we can just copy that into there, right? So now I have all three of my IR spectra, right, for the acetaldehyde, the acetamide, and the acetyl chloride, all in a single file right here. So what I can do now is the easiest way to do it is you just simply first plot just simply A and B, right, the acetaldehyde. So if I go here, I set this up, I say I want to do, the scatter with smooth lines, we get this right here. So what I'm going to do now is go to select data. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change what the label is for this series, right? Right now it's just simply labeled as series 1. I can click here on edit and I can give it a series name. So I'm just going to simply name this acetaldehyde, right? So that way we have this right here. The next thing we want to do, right, is we want to then plot the other two spectra. So if we click here and go to add, what we can do now, right, is we can add in the acetamide, right? That's the second one that I have here. I click on this right here to select the range. And so now for the acetamide, right, that's row C and D. The X, series for acetamide is row C. For the Y values, right, that's row D. So I have this now. So I click OK, right? And now I can already see right here, right? It's added the acetamide data into it now, right? And so now the acetamide data is orange, my acetaldehyde data, right, is blue. They're directly overlapping with each other in these cases, right? So I can see, very clearly some things that are very similar, right? So I can see some of these points are very close, right? I can see the differences here in those carbonyl stretches very dramatically, right? And very easily by eye now without having to look at the numbers. So we have those two now, right? The last thing we want to do is add the acetyl chloride, right? So again, just click on add. I'm gonna put in the name, so acetyl chloride. Click on the X values here, right? So now that's going to be row D. And then I have for the Y values, I have row F. Click OK. Right, so now that's been plotted here, right? So that's the gray plot right there. So I can click on OK. All of this is good. So the last thing we want to do, right, is we want to make sure that our plot overall looks really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this chart and I'm going to make it its own new sheet. So that way everything is not a lot easier to look at and click on. Right, so we have this right here. So the first things that we all want to do is change the layout, right? Because we want to add in, the title of what our plot is. We want to add in, what the X and Y axis, means, right? We want to throw in a legend as well in those cases, right? So I click on quick layout. And so the easiest one to do it, right, is going to be just simply this first one. Click on this right here. Right, so here we can see, right, what all the three different plots are. So I can change right here what the chart title is. And so I can say, right, this is the, IR spectra or whatever I can, name it in this case. And so, right, what we have on the y-axis is going to be the absorption values. And so this is going to be A.E or A.U, right, for absorption units. And then the x-axis, right, since this is an IR spectrum, it's going to be in wave numbers. So this is just simply wave numbers. And then the units are cm, right, -1, right, and the -1 should be, superscript. So if I just simply highlight the -1 part, click here on home, here under font, click on this little dude right here, the font settings, click on superscript. Right, now we're superscript. So we're set there. That's done. The next thing that we want to do, right, is we want to make sure that, the axes look good, right? Because we don't need this whole like -500, -200 stuff. So if I just click here on this axis, click on it, I can change what the bounds are. So I want it to just end up at 0. And I want the max for the x-axis, right, to be 3,500. Right, and so we have that right there. And then for the vertical axis, right, if I click on that now, I can change this to being starting off at 0, right, because there's no negative intensity. Right, and so that's all of that set right there, right? So all of this is set. I mean, one thing you can do, I hate Calibri, right? I would say, you should always try and change it to Arial, right? Arial is a much better looking font, in my opinion. So now that the chart looks exactly the way that we want it to do, right, what we can do is we can just simply copy and paste this into, our Word document or whatever it is that we're working on, right? So if I take my Word document right here, I just click on this, right, Control C, right, or, just click copy right here, go to my Word document, Control V that in, paste it into there. Right. So now that's plotted into my document right here. Right. I mean, you could always just simply, edit it further if you needed to within here, right? But this should be good, right? Because you can just simply say like, oh, figure 1, IR spectra of derivatives, right, as our thing. And then you can just keep on working. And then this way, right, everything is just simply a single figure in here and everything looks good, just as you would want it to be.